we have our two co-chairs, Dr. Kevin Karaoke and Tim Isbers, representing the donors. Without further ado, I would like to say a few words before giving the floor to Dr. Kevin Karaoke. Just to inform you that this is the first donor committee meeting of the Climate Action Window, the ADF Climate Action Window. And we are holding this meeting with the 4 donors, namely Netherlands, Switzerland, Germany, and the UK. We also have in the room ADF donors. We welcome them and we are happy they participate to this session. We have also a few philanthropic organizations. You are welcome. This session is really to take stock of what we have done, we as the AFDB group have done so far since the ADF Climate Action Window was approved in December 2022. Without further ado, I will give the floor to Dr. Kevin Karaoke, who is the Vice President for Power, Energy, Climate Change, and Green Growth for the opening remark. After that, we'll have a few presentations from the theme, namely Dr. Nyong and Dr. James Kinyangi, who will take us through the work that has been done so far. Dr. Kevin, the floor is yours, please. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Hav. Executive directors, donors, colleagues, good evening. I am truly elated to make the opening remarks for the first formal donor committee meeting and briefing session on the Climate Action Window. We have come far from developing concept of the Climate Action Window, testing the hypothesis during the various engagement with ADF deputies during 2022, to approval and commitment of seed funding during ADF 16 replenishment meetings in Tangier, Morocco, as well as the approval of the guidelines and subsequent operationalization of the Climate Action Window in 2023. Leading to calls for proposals for the adaptation sub-window in December last year at COP28 in Dubai. Our meeting today, therefore, offers a timely opportunity to update and receive feedback on the results of the appraisal of the said proposals from the Climate Action Window Donor Committee. But allow me to first recount the statuses of climate change, climate finance, and the role of the Climate Action Window in ADF countries. According to the Global Center on Adaptation, Africa's climate change is locked in for the next 20 years. At the same time, the World Meteorological Organization reports that Africa is warming 50% faster than the global average. This means that Africa will continue to face the increasingly frequent and severe adverse weather events. Last year, Cyclone Freddy made landfall in Southern Africa twice in a month, and the floods in Kenya and Tanzania earlier this month, as well as the current drought in Southern Africa, attest to this. Yet, Africa, despite contributing a mere 3% of historical greenhouse gas emission, is already the most vulnerable continent. It accounts for 9 out of 10 most vulnerable countries globally. Meanwhile, Africa accounted for only $30 billion or 2.5% of global climate finance in 2021-2022, which is a tiny fraction of the annual $277 billion required to meet Africa's climate goals. The huge gap in Africa's climate finance is what motivates the African Development Bank to make concerted efforts to mobilize increasing climate finance for the continent. Efforts include the commitment to allocate at least 40% of its annual investments amounting to $25 billion as climate finance during 2020-2025. And I'm happy to say that we are largely on target to achieve this goal if we maintain the current lending volume, having generated $14 billion, including a record of $5.85 billion in 2023 as climate finance. We were also the first MDB to exceed parity between mitigation and adaptation finance in favor of adaptation. Other efforts include commitment together with the Global Center on Adaptation to raise $25 billion for adaptation action on the continent by 2025, which is in line with our undertaking as part of as part of 2021 Climate Change and Green Growth Framework to increase Africa's access to global climate finance to 10% from the current 3%. But even this will not move the needle of climate finance on the continent. Only innovation will dramatically boost Africa's access to climate finance. Hence, the bank conceptualizing innovative schemes, including guarantee mechanisms, such as the $1 billion recently concluded with UK's FCDO. There's also the issuance of sustainable hybrid bonds, and of course, the climate action window, which we are discussing today. Focusing on the climate action window, this window seeks to mobilize $4 billion, and this is interesting coincidence. You'll see why. In the current program ADF 16 window, and up to $13 billion in future replenishments, and was established with $429 million of seed financing from Germany, the Netherlands, where my co-chair comes from, and then Switzerland and the UK. This constitutes another effort. We therefore cannot these countries enough for believing in our dream on behalf of the ADF countries. The first call for proposals for the climate action window elicited 359 eligible proposals worth $4 billion, hence why I was saying that it's interesting that it's $4 billion. And yes, you heard me right, $4 billion targeting only $322 million allotted for the sub-window. This highlights the extent of the adaptation needs, and it validates our focus on adaptation and confirming the speed of processing requests. Yet, we plan to learn from the hiccups we have experienced this time around for more seamless processing of requests. As the Climate Action Window Secretariat will attest, we also envisage leveraging on the Climate Action Window proceeds dramatically to increase availability and access to climate finance, further enshrining our AAA of climate finance, which I have mentioned, that is availability, access, and affordability. In this regard, the bank's board of directors has approved $13.2 million for the climate action window from its net income, and which was approved this morning by the Board of Governors at this annual meeting. We therefore call on you to increase support for this window, whose 75% of the proceeds are allocated for adaptation for Africa's most needy communities. But I think I also must say that, mark you, the Climate Policy Initiative projects that Africa's adaptation needs will require roughly $52 billion per year through 2030. On this vein, in my view, it is the proposal by the African Development Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank for rechanneling SDRs through MDBs that portends the greatest promise of mobilizing climate finance at scale, and therefore the most transformative climate action. On this note, I think I'll give the floor to Tim to co-chair the next session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin, for these inspiring first words, and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome, everybody. I believe it's more than the current donor committee present here, both other state donors and other interested people. I'm here because the current donor committee has asked me to co-chair this meeting, which is actually the first donor committee meeting. And the purpose of the donor committee meeting is to advise the bank on pipeline, the budget, and the results framework. And I think, like Kevin said, the goal of today is to really look at the prioritized projects that came out of the first call for proposals. I think 41 in total, that make up the adaptation window. I think we can all be very pleased to reach this stage after our negotiations that Kevin mentioned in Tangier for the last time. And we're all pioneering what even other MDBs following this concept. So it's still in an early phase, but I think the reaction has been great from in the uptake during the call for proposals. I think it's good to start with an introduction or presentation by management. I think by Dr. Nyong. First James. Okay, James first, and then there will be some room for discussion afterwards. So James, yeah. Tony will start. Yeah, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, executive directors, partners, your excellencies. Thank you for the privilege of thank you for the privilege that I have today to be able to present what we have done with this Climate Action Network this window. It's been a very exciting 18 months since this facility was launched. We've been able in that period to develop the operational guidelines. And these guidelines have been very important because they provide the criteria and processes for project selection and prioritization. It also gives us an idea of the governance structure as well as the proposed climate outcomes in the adaptation pipeline. The bank has actively engaged the public over this fund. We've created awareness. We've also done sensitizations to ensure that our regional member countries are able to submit very good proposals to this. Last year at COP28, we launched the first call, as VP Karuki has said, and that generated quite a lot of interest. Actually, what we got was 3,709 applications. We were able to just scale it down to the 539 that is mentioned. But the interesting thing is at COP26, many donors said they want to double their adaptation financing. And the questions that came after that was, where are those adaptation projects in Africa? So we are happy to present that we have those adaptation projects we're going to see, like VP Kevin has said, that far exceeds the budget that we have. Yes, we know that Africa is known for vulnerability to climate change, but we also have opportunities to remain a low-emitting continent by paying attention to our mitigation efforts. So we are not only dealing with adaptation. I have good news that today we're going to launch the mitigation sub-window, the call for the first proposal for the mitigation sub-window. And we will also very shortly be launching the call, to be an open call, launch the TA that will allow us to prepare the nationally determined contributions, support countries in their long-term strategies, and also in preparing the energy transition plans. My colleague James will come up to tell us how the projects that were selected, what were the criteria, and how did we arrive at the projects that we pick. So we look forward to continuing our collaboration with every one of you. We believe that we're onto something very good here that will ensure that African countries, particularly the 37 low-income countries, will no longer be complaining of not having access to climate finance. And thank you, James. Thank
you. Thank you very much, Tony. Executive directors, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, the cow donors. I'll take a few minutes to take you through the climate action window pipeline of projects that have been developed. I would like to thank everybody who participated in this exercise, both in the bank and within the wider community of the applicants who submitted their proposals to the call for proposals that was launched in December of last year at COP28. This project pipeline aims to respond to scaling up adaptation action in ADF countries. And we are very pleased that we have developed the prioritization report. It is with the donors. They're reviewing that, and we will be able to get their inputs within either today's meeting or in the subsequent coming days. Next slide, please. I think when the ADF deputies were reviewing the strategic aspects of the climate action window, I think they emphasized three things. So one, they emphasized the financial additionality of the window that would aim to demonstrate that we are doing more beyond the mainstreaming of climate finance that we are currently undertaking in ADF operations, which VP Kariuki has spoken to. The second thing was they wanted the projects to demonstrate selectivity, and the third thing was to demonstrate complementarity. So additionality in terms of financing the climate, the filling the climate finance gap, playing a catalytic role, reducing the fiscal distress that the African countries face, and also placing greater focus on adaptation by attributing 100% of the resources spent as climate finance. In terms of selectivity, I think the idea was to invest in prioritize larger impactful investments that would align with the fund's strength, and as well also focus investments in the 6 priority areas that were recommended by the deputies. In terms of complementarity, I think they insisted that we need to build synergies with climate interventions within and outside the ADF. Next slide, please. In terms of the climate action window itself, I think the VP has spoken to the seed funds that were pledged at the 16th replenishment, which is $429 million, but we have recently received a pledge of $13.2 million from the AFDB, which has brought that to $442 million. 75% of these initial resources are allocated to the adaptation sub-window, and those are the resources that will be subject to allocation today when we discuss the pipeline. There is 64 million allocated to the mitigation sub-window, which VP Kariuki and also Director Nyong have spoken to. We will launch this mitigation sub-window shortly. And then also there is 43 million under the technical assistance sub-window. In terms of the emerging pipeline, I think you may have heard, next slide please. You may have heard that there were 3,709 registrations on the online platform that we developed for submission of the proposals. We had an eligibility criteria screening there that was able to reduce those registrations and applications to about 1,400. And in the final analysis, when we closed the call, there were 359 submissions of the full concept notes. And after we did the first initial cleaning of the portfolio, we were left with 330 projects that were presented to the panel of 7 evaluators that was recruited. The panel passed 158 projects that went into the prioritization process. Out of that, we will be presenting those projects that were prioritized, those that have been placed on the reserve list, and we will also, well, we will not discuss, but there were 78 projects that were not prioritized. Out of the 80 projects in the current pipeline that we have now, there's 41 projects that have been prioritized, and there are 39 projects that have been placed on the reserve pipeline. Next slide, please. We are pleased that all ADF countries have been covered through this call for proposals. And through the allocation, 31 national projects will be receiving resources to implement national projects, and there are 10 multinational projects that have also been prioritized. I want to say that it's very important to note that these projects are responding to Paris alignment, 100% climate finance attribution. They are showing great impacts for adaptation potential, a lot of country ownership, and they are also responding to cross-cutting themes on gender, fragility, biodiversity, and nature-based solutions and jobs for youth. Next slide, please. So let me just quickly say we are proposing 41 projects to be prioritized for 322 million. These projects are bringing additional climate finance of about 170 million, and they are also demonstrating that there is 1.6 billion of other co-finance, mainly development finance, that will also be executed alongside the CAO grants that are being requested. The 39 projects that are in the reserve pipeline represent submissions from 24 ADF countries. They are requesting $470 million. They are pledging to co-finance with $299 million, and there's $1.1 billion that is coming from other co-finance. Next slide, please. In terms of the portfolio that is emerging, we see that out of the 41 projects, about half of those are in the agriculture and water sectors, and they integrate climate information and early warning systems, which underscores the importance of climate information for adaptation planning. For example, if you look at the project that is submitted by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the government of Malawi on rehabilitation of 4,500 hectares and the conservation of 40 microcatchments that were devastated by Hurricane Freddy in affected areas to reach almost 460,000 beneficiaries. You see a lot of that integration between agriculture, water, and climate and early warning systems. Next slide, please. In terms of additionality, I think I mentioned this was a very big area of interest for the donors and the deputies who established the window. They wanted greater focus on adaptation. I think we see that in the portfolio. We see that in the pipeline. For example, countries like Comoros that are dealing with the impacts of tropical cyclones in the Southern Indian Ocean have been allocated resources. Sao Tome and Principe that needs to build its capacity for enhanced hydrometeorological capacities. We see in terms of the fragile countries, Chad, they are proposed for allocation of resources to develop water supply systems and distribution networks to benefit 100,000 people. In Somalia, 30,000 farmers benefiting from crop livestock interventions and reaching almost 180,000 beneficiaries. In the underserved regions, we see proposals for allocation in Burundi and also Eritrea in terms of water infrastructure, resilient water infrastructure. Next slide, please. In terms of complementarity, let me say in the pipeline, we see a high degree of synergy, and I'm pleased to say that the projects are demonstrating that we are also reducing fragmentation. A lot of the submissions we got from the partners demonstrate that the bank, UN agencies, and ADF countries can develop bankable and transformative adaptation projects. Some of the projects that had strong proposals received technical assistance from the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program to prepare their projects. We see CSOs reflected in the portfolio, in the pipeline, playing a catalytic role in promoting locally led adaptation. For example, the project submitted by SNV in Burundi, which will enhance livelihoods through adaptations, through scaling up adaptation actions in Burundi with climate information systems to reach 250,000 beneficiaries, is bringing together the UNEP, the AFDB, the Adaptation Fund, and the government of Netherlands. So we see this synergy really being created in the projects that are being submitted. Lastly, allow me to mention there are some key observations. Next slide, please. There are some key observations that we are making at the moment. We see significant variations in country capacity to submit high quality bankable projects, and I think this underscores the importance of technical assistance in supporting the countries to come up with bankable projects. We also see that where there was collaboration between government and development partners, the proposals were very strong. We also see that those projects that have been prioritized, I think the independent panel recommended that some of those should receive technical assistance to strengthen their results framework by conducting the baseline studies and using the data that emanates from the baseline studies in order to inform their results frameworks. And then lastly, we see this high demand, I think, that we have demonstrated with 39 projects in the reserve pipeline submitted from 20 countries requesting 470 million. Ladies and gentlemen, I think allow me to stop there and back to you, Tim. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, James. Thank you, James, for the presentation. I believe now we have some time for the first donors of the climate action window to share some of their thoughts on the prioritization pipeline. So which one of you can I invite to speak? The UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Tim. So let me just start by saying that the UK remains firmly committed to the climate action window, and we think it's really promising, as we've seen in this very thorough presentation. I think, as the chair noted this in his opening remarks, we know that climate change is having a disproportionate impact on the 37 poorest countries in Africa, and that estimates suggest that these countries need around 500 billion of climate finance by 2030. And that despite this, as was said before, only a very small proportion of climate finance actually is received by African countries. And so we think that support from the climate action window is now more crucial than ever to help fill this gap. We're very pleased to join this first donor committee meeting for the climate action window, and we really value the opportunity to engage with the bank and with other donors, and look forward to continuing a strong and regular engagement in this kind of forum of the donor committee. And in particular, we are keen to engage also bilaterally on the pipeline of adaptation projects once we've had a bit more time to digest, and also on the forthcoming calls for proposal for mitigation and technical assistance, and on the result framework. We thank the bank again for sharing a very comprehensive update ahead of the meeting, and in particular, we welcome the net income transfer to the climate action window that others already noted. And we are very glad to see a wide range of originating partners in the pipeline proposals, with 50% of this being from outside the bank. We think this is testament to the strong interest in the climate action window. And going forward, it would also be great to define how the action window fits in the broader G20 climate finance architecture, and we would value further considerations from the bank on the role that the action window can play in this context, and how the bank is collaborating and coordinating with others in the context of the projects you've identified. We would also like to encourage the bank, to further consider the role of technical assistance. For example, we think there could be a strong case for additional technical assistance beyond the 10% indicative threshold that was indicated in the presentation, if this would help strengthen project proposals, particularly, for example, from civil society projects or from countries that might have lower capacity to put their proposals together. Lastly, let me just say that it's great to see other interest donors joining this meeting, and we hope that others will join the climate action window in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. Germany, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you, management, for this presentation, for organizing this meeting, which is very important after these months of working on the climate action window, to see where we are and to talk about the next steps. The climate action window is a very important instrument to strengthen climate action in ADF countries. And the response to the adaptation call for proposals is encouraging and underlines the relevance of the window. Yeah, maybe with respect to the adaptation window, it would be great if you could explain a bit more about the lessons learned that you made with this process, and what are you learning from this for the following calls for proposals for TA and for mitigation. We are curious to see the call for proposals for TA and for mitigation sub-windows. Especially for technical assistance sub-window, we think it's absolutely crucial to be used strategically to strengthen the country's capacities for climate action. And we would like to know more how this will be used to improve the project preparation, as we have seen about the need for adaptation projects, but also especially strategically, how far can we support LTS, NDC processes in the countries as a basis for country-owned processes and projects and efforts of climate action, and also to gain more support, e.g. by climate funds and other donors. Yeah, in the end, we are happy to be part of this initiative and experience, and would like to encourage others to join in. Thank you.
Thank you, Germany, and may I give the floor to Switzerland.
Thanks a lot. First of all, let me thank management for convening this first donor committee meeting. Switzerland is very encouraged by the strong demand for the climate action window, as demonstrated by this first call for proposals. We also very much appreciate the bank's proposed net income allocation to the window. I think this is making for a good start. So we take good note of the prioritization report, and we thank management for the presentation, for the details. Let me just make two brief comments on the substance of the report. For us, obviously, it's very important, and we have stressed that before, that the climate action window follows a very strong results and performance orientation and focuses on high quality, impactful, and ESG compliant projects. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the expected outcomes and the impact of the prioritized project. And so I think that would be helpful if you could give us a sense of what kind of results you're aiming at. And in that regard, we also look very much forward to further discussions on the results framework. Then the second point is regarding additionality. I think it's also something that we're very keen about, that the projects that the Climate Action Window finances demonstrate strong additionality and strong complementarity. I'm very glad you mentioned that in your presentation. And looking at the report, I noted with welcoming very much the high mobilization rate when it comes to development co-financing. However, we were a bit concerned about the so far rather low level of climate co-financing. And it would be interesting maybe if you could talk a little bit about the strategy of the climate action window to really also mobilize additional climate finance, in particular also private capital. Then just to finish it off, I think we would also be very interested to know a little bit more about the bank's strategy for resource mobilization going forward to meet the ambitious targets that we set for the window. And so we very much look forward to further engage with the bank on the climate action window and in particular on the upcoming calls for the mitigation and TA sub window. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Switzerland. And now the odd situation occurs where I need to hand the floor to myself as the fourth donor to respond. No, but let me first say climate action, and in particular climate change adaptation, are a key priority for the Netherlands. And we were therefore one of the first donors to commit 100 million euros to the climate action window of the African Development Fund. In particular to support the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program, the AAAP. The Netherlands focuses on climate-smart agriculture, water infrastructure, youth entrepreneurship, and innovative finance, and we welcome further discussion on issues such as coordination of activities and players, as well as the contributions to national policies such as NDCs, NAPs, and food system pathways. On the adaptation call for proposal, the call was heard hugely, with bringing down 3,709 applications to 41 prioritized projects is no small task. So thank you for the team for all the hard work in making this work in such a short time. Overall, we are, with the first impression that we have to report, we're quite pleased with the division of countries and sectors. We especially pleased to see a lot of attention for agriculture and water because these are essential for climate adaptation. A couple of questions from our side on the call for proposals. We are, like some of the other donors said, it is a shame that the co-financing target was not met at this first stage. And I think going forward, this would be something to look at a bit more, and maybe particularly to assess what are like the success factors to mobilize more climate finance from the ones that you actually had. Another point was we saw that 3 out of the 41 projects receive support from AAAP, and we actually see the climate action window and AAAP as two very strong and complementary initiatives. So we would like to see more projects that sort of move through from AAAP to the climate action window. Finally, we saw some projects on clean cooking, and this is definitely a very big priority for the Netherlands, so we are very happy to see it. But the question is this adaptation or is this mitigation or something else? So I'd like to hear your explanation on this. I think for the next steps, we hope that today's donor committee is a first step in a series of engagement with donors. I think you heard some of the other donors very happy to engage going forward. And like I said, we are pioneering with this climate action window, so please use us and our feedback to improve. I think we have some exciting new steps with the mitigation TA sub-window. And like my colleague from Switzerland said, I think the results framework will be an important discussion going forward to actually see if it generates the impact that we all expect to see. Finally, we hope to use the MTR of ADF 16 in Benin in October to have a next check-in moment on the climate action window and discuss where we stand at the moment. Thank you. I think now is the time to move to a broader discussion. I believe Hervé will moderate this plenary discussion.
Absolutely, Tim. Thank you very much, co-chair. Thank you also, Dr. Kevin, for co-chairing this meeting. Now, let us open the floor to everyone. Please raise your flag. I see that some flags are being removed from the table. So please, otherwise you raise your mic so that we can give you the floor. The floor is open for question, please. It's open also for questions for those that are not around the table. Let me put it that way. Yes, I see a hand. Please go ahead.
Okay.
If you may introduce yourself before, please. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm Julie Kaindeke from WaterAid. I'm just interested. Of course, I'm so excited about the whole climate action window, and it also falls very well into our 10-year strategy as WaterAid globally. I'm interested to know, based on the evaluations that were done, I noticed that almost all countries got some projects, but I didn't see anything from Ethiopia. Were there no strong proposals? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. Maybe let's take a few more before. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mahesh Kotecha. I'm from the private sector. I'm very delighted to hear the degree of discussion and depth of analysis that has gone into the selection of priority projects. And I'm pleased that I was able to listen in and I heard about use of guarantees. I think it's very impressive that you're doing that, and I hope that you will encourage private sector to come in and participate to the extent that it can by providing guarantees so that countries that are the most vulnerable and have viable projects that are bankable can be can be financed by the private sector? Thank you. And I would like to know what you have in mind for that and what kind of donor support might be available for blended finance. We are actually setting up a financial guarantee company, an investment company for private sector investments in climate. So I'd be happy to talk to anyone who is interested in that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. An important topic where the bank is investing a lot of energy. Yes, another question. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Chris Ostrowski from the Carbon Reserve. I was just wondering whether you could talk about the role that carbon credits might play in the climate action window. Carbon Reserve is working with the LEAF Coalition to this end, and sovereign carbon credits. I'd just like you to speak a little bit about the project like that would fit into the climate action window. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Maybe we will pause here. The last one before we give the floor to.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Samuel Okulony. I come from Uganda. I work with the civil side organization, and my question is actually coming out from the civil side perspective. I have quite seen that much of the money is going into the government side, which is okay, good. But I've not seen on how much is the civil society involved in terms of working with the local communities or even monitoring on how these projects are being implemented to the extent that they tend to achieve the desired targets. And the other is in regards to adaptation versus mitigation. I know Africa is more vulnerable and we're targeting more into adaptation. I kind of struggle to see if there's any effort in terms of the climate action window going actually into mitigation as well. Because we, as much as we need to adapt, we still need to contribute towards mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me give back the floor to Dr. Nyong, Dr. Kinyangi. We have 4 questions. I trust you took notes. For the benefit of everyone, let me repeat the first question from WaterAid. Why Ethiopia is not in your list, at least this time? The second question around the carbon market. The third question on the implication of the private sector. And finally, why civil society is not big enough, if I can summarize. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, moderator, and thanks for the questions. The presenter, James, had already made it clear that every ADF country is benefiting from it, which means Ethiopia is in that list and was seen at the map, of that. In terms of why CSOs are not there, CSOs are there. We did not really list every organization, every country that has benefited. We just used, mentioned some key issues, that we were keen on. It wasn't a list of projects that have been approved, so you don't have that. But trust me that the CSOs are also represented. I'll touch briefly on the carbon markets. It's something that is very important to us as a bank. Currently, we are not yet using carbon credits to offset either loans or anything of that sort. Countries own the carbon. And so if there's anything to be done with the carbon, it's the countries that own them. But we will provide guidance on what needs to be done. As a matter of fact, on Thursday, we're having a side event on Africa's carbon markets. And some of these issues that you've raised will also be treated there. James wants to talk about the private sector and this.
Thank you, Tony. Just to say this, for the climate action window, these are early days. I think when we made the proposal to the deputies to establish the climate action window, I think we agreed that we will first of all just focus on grant instruments at the moment. Later on, we will perhaps consider, maybe at the midterm review, we will introduce the debate on the use of other instruments such as guarantees to cover risk or to de-risk capital where you have participation of the private sector in investment. So I think this is something that is down the line, is coming. I think it's going to be a discussion between ourselves and the deputies. On the second aspects of participation by the civil society, I think we already saw that within the existing pipeline, there are 2 projects from civil society organizations. And I'm pleased to report also in the reserve pipeline, there are actually 9 out of the 39 projects in the reserve pipeline. There are actually 9 projects which have been submitted by civil society organizations. So there's quite a bit of participation there. In terms of Ethiopia, I think if you see the recommended pipeline that is being reviewed by the donor committee, I think there are many projects that are going to support Ethiopia in many different sectors, in water, in agriculture, food security and nutrition, and also in early warning systems. Let me end there. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Professor Nyong. Let me open the floor for the second round of questions. This will be the last one because we are ahead. I mean, we have passed the time that was allotted to us. Please, if you are not around the table, you can still ask questions. I will come to you with the mic. I was wondering if ADF deputies that are around the table but that are not donors to the climate action window yet will have a few comments, a few suggestions, maybe to help the team. I'm not asking you for a check, please. Don't get me wrong. So, but just some comments, suggestion, orientation, guidance to the team.
As you're still waiting for volunteers, could I respond to one question that was asked by the donors on the results framework?
Sure.
I think it was very important.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the discussion on the results framework, I think, is pending from the donor side, as we had indicated in our earlier responses, that the results framework that we presented with the cow proposal and that is elaborated in the operational guidelines that have been reviewed by the donors is only indicative at the moment. We had initially worked with our colleagues in SNDR to make sure that the framework responds both to the results tracking system of the ADF and also the results management framework of the bank. We are trying to sift through the data that we have for the projects that are in the pipeline now to aggregate their outcomes and the indicators that they're proposing in order to see how well they respond to the cow results framework. For example, under the cow results framework, we are expecting that there will be contribution to reducing degradation in about 1 million hectares of current degraded land. We know that there are some projects that are proposing to contribute to that indicator. We know that we have proposed 20 million farmers benefiting from climate smart agriculture technologies. We know that there are a number of projects that are presenting several hundreds of thousands of farmers will benefit from climate smart agriculture technologies. So we're still in the process of sifting through the data and aggregating those numbers. And I think I welcome from management side, I think we will have this discussion with the donors going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. Just for the benefit of everyone, James mentioned SNDR is the department of the bank in charge of quality assurance and results. Yes, one question.
Yeah, I'm Mumbai from Kenya. I'm working on the carbon credit market. So for me, it's just more of like an highlight for the team if they can rethink on adding a one project on the carbon market, because it's a big thing right now. We're trying to create, like, the team can rethink in terms of monitoring and also documentation and all of that in terms of data capturing. It may be a project to just try typeset the African carbon market and see how it can be captured across the African market. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Maybe let me take one of, okay.
Thank you. So my name is Edson Shachwayo. I'm from UNEP. I just have one minor question concerning the 39 projects that are on the reserve pipeline. Just asking for clarification if there will be further funding allocated for this, or there are some comments that will need to be addressed for these projects to be considered to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe let me take one or two last questions before handing over to Professor Nyong and James. I see carbon market is coming again. James, oh, okay, I see hand.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charity Megwe. I am based in Nairobi, Kenya. I just wanted to ask again the question about mitigation finance. We've seen a lot of funds allocated to adaptation and very little allocated to mitigation. So based on the opening remarks, it was mentioned that, Africa is already experiencing impacts of climate change. Yes, we need to adapt, but I think it will also be nice to help mitigate climate change. So what are you doing about also like balancing the funding on that?
Thank you very much. I'm looking if there's another hand going once, going twice. Oh, thank you. Let me come to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Akapela from Zambia. I would just like to get a very clear statement on the instruments to be used. There was mention of grants. So for the avoidance of doubt, what is the position? Are we talking about grants or are we talking about other instruments? That's the question I would like to be answered.
Thank you for your question. Now let me hand over to the team to respond before we close. Dr. Nyong, James, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll reiterate again on the carbon market. There's so much complexity in the carbon market right now. There is so much smoke, let's put it that way. And when you look at Article 6.2 that is just coming on board, there is a lot that we need to prepare and learn. And like I'm saying, maybe this is just a way to tell you, please come to the side event on the carbon market on Thursday. We're going to unpack the complexity, and highlight all the opportunities that we have, either in the voluntary carbon market or in the compliance market. And we'll see where these types of projects will come in, because eventually they will be earning carbon credits and we need to be able to situate them properly. In terms of balancing adaptation and mitigation financing, it's quite important. But when you look at the continent now, you find that we're dealing more with the impacts. Everyone is talking about the transition, but on that transition, there'll be casualties. A lot of damages are happening. Look at Kenya, for instance, just coming out of 4 or 5 seasons of drought, now going into floods. We contribute little to global greenhouse gas, maybe 4% or thereabout, but the impacts are hefty. And so that's why we have devoted more resources now to deal with those impacts we are seeing. But we are not completely turning our backs from mitigation. That's what I've said. We will put that in, explore the opportunities, and ensure that the continent remains a low-emitting continent. That's the vision that we have for COW. James, I'll leave it to the instruments. So, thanks.
Yeah, I think at the moment, let me clarify, at the moment is only grants. I think I had said that there is discussion. I think there will be discussion at the midterm review and at the full-term review of the climate action window, whether we adopt other instruments other than grant. And let me clarify, even the grants we have now are actually non-reimbursable grants. So they're grants that you apply and you spend the grant and you don't have to reimburse the grant. On the pipeline, let me say, it was a very intense exercise with independent panel of 7 reviewers with the support from the Secretariat. If it was the wish of the independent panel, those 80 projects, if we had $800 million, we would have allocated all those 80 projects, because all these 80 projects were found to be at the readiness stage for implementation. So to drop those 39 projects into the reserve list, I think, was not an easy exercise. I think the first pass that the panel did, they actually came up with 51 projects that were worth about $630 million. And so dropping some of those projects to the reserve list, I think, was not an easy exercise. And I think the message coming out of this is that that part of the pipeline, that is 39 projects, is a pipeline that is ready to implement. Remember that there are 78 other projects that actually passed the evaluation but were not prioritized. And the panel found a number of those and recommended them for technical assistance in order to support their further development into bankable projects. So I think, let me just say that those 80 projects are very good quality projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. Now, yes, Dr. Kevin, you want to complement?
Yes, I would like to complement a number of areas. There was one question that I was asked on, we've not been able to respond to it, and this is on the level of co-financing. I think climate finance is a very funny area, because you find that today, if you look at the global climate finance flows, they go to countries that have the capacity to structure projects and therefore attract climate financing. And so if you look at Africa, one of the reasons why Africa is not able to access significant climate financing is that lack of capacity. And that's why we said in this particular case, let us look at ways of financing projects that we can be able to demonstrate the impact that we are going to have. And it brings in to bear the issue of and the significance of technical assistance. And that's why I also wanted to clarify here very early on that the 10 million UA that has been allocated from the climate action window will be earmarked specifically for technical assistance. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that and there was also the issue about resource mobilization. I think our target was, first of all, to prove the concept. I think the demand is there. I think the concept has been proven, and therefore, I think we'll be working with FARM. I see the Senior Director of FARM here. We will be working with them to go on a very strong resource mobilization effort, both from state actors as well as philanthropists, etc., etc. And I think finally, I think I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the work that has been done by the Secretariat. It's a very, very small Secretariat led by James, and they did very heavy lifting. I think reviewing 3,702 proposals is not mean feat, and therefore, with all due respect, I will request that we give them a clap so that we acknowledge what they've done. Yeah, and I think on that basis, I think my co-chair, I think I'll cede the floor to you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Kariuki, and thank you all to all participants. I think mindful of the time, we're at the end of this meeting, and I'd also first like to thank Hervé for the great moderation of the questions. I think we can look back on a very successful and interesting first meeting of the donor committee and an information meeting on the climate action window. I would like to sincerely thank VP Kariuki and Tony and James for their presentation and all the hard work of their team in setting up the climate action window, but also in preparing the meeting today and all the documents. I think the presentation showed that we had a very successful first call of proposals, focus on climate adaptation, and there is much more demand. So if you have some fund for climate adaptation, you know where to find them. The mitigation call for proposals and the TA will follow soon, and I think we're looking forward to seeing those call for proposals. And like you've seen from the presentation, I think the first call for proposals and the first prioritized project shows that it's possible to give a good cross-section of the ADF members, but also the various relevant sectors. I think the donors had some great remarks. I think in general, they welcomed the strong interest for the call for proposals and the thank management for the first selection and prioritization report. And I think they all signaled that they were very eager to engage any further. There were some questions which are not summarized for the sake of time. But I think all in all, the questions from the room, there were some questions on private sector and the CSOs. I think, like the team said, we'll explore this in the future, and the CSOs are already in there. I think the carbon credits was discussed, but also how it's still up to the countries, and you're all invited to the side event on Thursday. And that the balance between mitigation and adaptation, we now focus on adaptation. And also maybe to add, there was also an explicit choice by some of the donors to give their preference to adaptation because of the needs of adaptation on the African continent, particularly for the ADF countries. The resource mobilization will be nice. I'll be looking forward to see this grand tour of the climate action window globally, and if we can do something as initial donors, we're happy to support. In closing, we'd like to thank all of you for participating, the donors, the other ADF donors, and all the other participants in the room. And I think herewith the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Maybe I suggest maybe that Dr. Kariuki say a few words about the upcoming call for proposal. Dr. Kariuki, please.
Actually, this was supposed to be a secret, but it was let out of the bag by Tony. I'm actually going to launch the call for proposals for the adaptation windows, not tomorrow, not next week for mitigation, not tomorrow, not next week, now.
Thank you very much. So you are coming to the floor? Yes, please to the stage. Yes.
So one of the things I said is that we have learned. We are going to be swift and we're going to move fast. So one of the things that we were able to do is to debug the systems. So by saying that we are launching the call for proposals now, it means the platform is ready and people can start applying for the mitigation, for their mitigation projects, for the mitigation sub-window projects today, and they'll be considered. Let me stop there. I think that's where we'll stop. And the other thing is that we also expect that maybe we are hoping that the donor committee can give approval to the list of the 40 projects that were submitted, that have been prioritized. We hope to get maybe approvals maybe by the 11th or thereabouts of June, because we are under a lot of demand. And I would just emphasize, especially for the incoming director of farm, look, I expect that the seed capital will be depleted within no time. So we need more resources. Thank you very much.
So please spread the word. The call for Valerie, yes, please, you want to say something?
Yes, just to please say that the meeting on the 11th of June has already been programmed with the 4 CW donors. And so we can actually expect to get your feedback at that meeting. And this gives you enough time to breathe, to go through them. Any questions prior to that, please do reach out to the team. Looking forward to speaking with you on the 11th. Thank you.
Thank you. So I was saying spread the word, please, for the call for proposal. You can apply now. Spread the word. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.